Have you ever felt relieved not to be invited to a social event and then immediately crushed because you weren't? That contradiction, that confusing double bind, is something I live with often. And from conversations with neurodivergent clients and friends, I know I'm not the only one. Hi, I'm Essie. I'm an autistic and ADHD therapist, and this experience, it's personal, but it's also universal. I want to walk you through something I struggle with constantly: the longing to belong and the deep need to be alone, the desire to feel included and the intense need to protect my energy, the hope of connection and the anxiety of what that connection might cost. Let's begin with the contradiction itself. I want to be invited. I want to feel like I matter to people, like I'm part of something, like others are thinking of me when they plan a get-together or celebration. And yet, and this is the hardest part, when that invitation actually arrives, a different feeling sometimes kicks in: dread or guilt. That internal battle starts. Do I have the energy? Can I manage the sensory environment? Will I have to mask the whole time? Is it worth it? There are so many occasions when I've gotten an invite and felt like I should say yes, but I know what happens if I ignore my limits. After a long work week, I don't have a lot of fuel left. I want to spend that free time curled up with my dogs, playing video games, working on a creative project, or just doing chores in peace while listening to a good audiobook. Those are the moments when I actually feel like myself again, like I'm refueling. So when I say no, it's not because I don't want people, it's because I'm trying to manage my needs. And yet, when I'm not invited, it hurts. I spiral. I wonder why I wasn't thought of. My brain starts telling me a story about what that absence means. This contradiction is one I haven't fully figured out. I navigate it every week, and sometimes I get it right. Other times I don't. But I want to name it out loud because I know how many of us neurodivergents sit with this unspoken tension, feeling like we're the only ones wrestling with it. I want to talk more about the toll that social events take on neurodivergence, and not just the event itself, but also the preparation beforehand and the recovery afterward. I start mentally preparing days in advance sometimes. I think about what I'm going to wear, what I need to bring, what I might have to explain about my food restrictions because I have chronic illness, and how I'll get there and back. That alone can feel like a part-time job. Once I'm there, I'm immediately on alert. If it's noisy, if there are lots of overlapping conversations, bright lights, clashing music, and chatter, I can feel myself start to get overwhelmed. It becomes hard to think clearly. I begin losing my ability to process language or track the flow of conversation. I'm nodding, smiling, making small talk, but it's performative. I'm doing it because I've learned how to do it, not because it feels natural or easy. And the executive function demands don't stop just because I'm out with people. I'm still working to track everyone's tone, body language, facial expressions, choice of words, the implicit social rules and hierarchies in play. I'm trying to remember names and whether I've met someone before. I'm also trying to manage my own self-talk, which is saying things like, "Was that weird? Did you just interrupt? Are they bored?" That inner dialogue alone can be exhausting. So when I say that socializing costs me something, I really mean it. There have been plenty of times I've come home from what looked like a casual dinner out and immediately needed to lie in my room for an hour. I've skipped my usual shower routine because I was too wiped out. There's even been times I cried, not because anything necessarily went wrong, but because the overwhelm hit so hard once that mask came off, and the loneliness that followed felt crushing in its intensity. One of the biggest reasons I've hesitated around social events is the fear of getting it wrong. I've had so many moments where I said something that landed weird, or I misread the room, or I went too deep into a passion and could see the other person check out. And even if no one said anything in the moment, my brain replays it later, on loop. I think about the time I overshared at a friend's dinner, or when I made a joke in a group conversation and it fell flat. I remember the looks, or even just the silence, and my brain fills in the gaps with all the worst case scenarios. They think you're too much, you're so awkward, you made them uncomfortable. That fear doesn't go away just because I'm aware of it. It's built on real experiences, some from years ago that still feel fresh, and it creates a kind of paralysis. I know in the past I've started anticipating failure before I've even shown up. So I might put off replying. I make vague promises about attending, like, can I let you know how I'm feeling on the day? And part of that is because I don't want to disappoint people, but the bigger part is that I'm already imagining the ways I might disappoint them if I do come. There are times I've sat in my car outside an event, just breathing and trying to psych myself up to go in. And sometimes I just drive away instead. The problem in the past was that I was afraid of social failure, of being misunderstood, of being too intense, of being too quiet or too blunt, and it was immobilizing. Even though I often say no to events, it still stings when I'm not invited, and that can feel confusing, even to myself. I've had to sit with the contradiction. Why do I feel hurt about being left out of something I probably wouldn't have attended anyway? Usually, it's not about the event, but rather what the absence of an invitation symbolizes. It feels like evidence that I don't matter enough to be included, that I've slipped from people's minds, and that hurts far more than missing a party ever could. I remember times when friends posted photos from a gathering I hadn't even known was happening. No malice behind it, just I wasn't on their radar, or I was being actively excluded. It's often hard to know which, and I've felt like I vanished, like I wasn't part of anyone's inner circle. I try to rationalize it, tell myself it's fine, that I probably would have declined if I had been invited, but it doesn't stop the ache. It doesn't stop my brain from doing the math. If you were important, you'd be there. And I have to be honest, sometimes not being invited makes sense because I've said no a few times in a row before. And when they do stop inviting me, I tell myself, well, what were you expecting? You said no to the last couple of invites. Even though I had legitimate reasons for saying no, it still feels like rejection. It still feels like I'm not worth the extra effort. I want to believe people will keep trying, especially given the fact they know I'm neurodivergent and have different needs, but I also know how tiring that must be for them. I get it, but I grieve it anyway. Because there's a loneliness that comes from not just being alone, but from feeling like no one sees you in their future plans. And as much as I value solitude, that kind of invisibility still hurts. There's this middle place I and many neurodivergents live in. It's not full isolation, but it's not deep connection either. It's where I have people I care about, but I'm not necessarily woven into the fabric of their lives, not in the way I see others are. For most of my life, I haven't had a core friend group. I've had friends, sure, but not that group chat that's always buzzing, not the ride or die crew, not someone I'd automatically call with big news. And I've asked myself more than once, what does that say about me? Part of it is how I show up socially. I tend to be the one who organizes things when I do want connection. It's just easier that way. I can control the environment, the timing, the flow of activities. It lets me accommodate my needs, but I rarely get invited to things I didn't plan myself. That passive, organic kind of inclusion, it feels elusive. I also don't linger in social spaces where spontaneous interactions can happen. I can't. Sensory issues, fatigue from being hypermobile, my restricted diet, it all makes public outings complicated. I'm not someone who can just pop in for drinks or food without pre-planning. And while I've made peace with those limitations, they do stack up against me when it comes to social connections. I've had to accept that I'm not easy to include, and that's not self-pity, it's just reality. And it's okay, but it does make it harder to maintain bonds, especially when everyone else's social rhythm is faster, looser, more flexible than mine. I can't keep pace. I think I've grown to appreciate my own company, in part because it's been the most reliable, but that doesn't mean I don't wish things were different sometimes. That I didn't occasionally wish for someone who just got my rhythms and didn't need me to explain or apologize every time we spoke. One of the most painful dynamics in all of this, for me at least, is comparison, and I know I'm not supposed to do it. I know all the quotes and reminders that say some version of, don't compare your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel, but that logic doesn't always reach the part of me that feels forgotten. I'll be scrolling through social media and see a group of people laughing at a dinner or celebrating a birthday or clinking glasses at some party I didn't even know was happening. I pause on the photo, I read the caption. I don't even want to be at that party. Yet in those moments, my inner critic ramps up. It doesn't whisper, it shouts. You're not lovable. You're not fun. You're not worth inviting. It's that same voice that's been there since I was young, since I was first told I was too needy, too emotional, too awkward. That voice has shape-shifted over time, but its core message hasn't changed. You don't fit. And because that voice is so familiar, I tend to believe it. Even now, as a therapist who teaches others to challenge their inner critics, I still get caught in it. I still spiral into thoughts like, if you were more likable, you'd have been there. Or worse, you must have done something to push them away. Sometimes the spiral leads me to reviewing old conversations, rereading texts, replaying social moments in my head, looking for the thing I said or did that was wrong. That's perseveration, the mental loop that doesn't quit. And even though I can name it and even teach about it, that doesn't mean I can always stop it in myself. That's the cruel thing about internalized ableism. It doesn't sound like society anymore, it starts to sound like you. And it takes conscious effort every time to remember, this isn't the truth, this is conditioning, and it takes even more effort to show myself the same grace I give to others. This is where I often find myself stuck, in an all or nothing loop. If I say yes to every invitation, I burn out. If I say no too often, I disappear. It feels like no matter what I choose, I'm going to pay a price. I've had times when I've really pushed myself to say yes more, to be more social, to show up, to take those chances, and sometimes it worked. But often I came home utterly wiped. I would crash, not just for the night, sometimes for days. Then I'd swing the other way. I'd go into retreat mode, I'd decline everything, go full hermit, and at first, that felt safe, like reclaiming my nervous system. But eventually, the loneliness would creep back in. I'd start wondering who noticed I was gone, and if no one reached out, that part of me that keeps score would start to speak up. See, you don't matter to them. You are always peripheral. So I swing between overcommitting and total withdrawal, trying to find a rhythm that works for me. But I haven't found a perfect balance yet. And I think that's something I've had to accept. That balance for me is dynamic. It changes with my stress level, my health, my workload, even the weather. To neurotypicals, it might seem like I'm flaky or avoidant. In reality, I'm managing an internal system that's incredibly sensitive to overstimulation and emotional overwhelm. But that nuance doesn't always translate to others, and that gap between how I feel and how I'm perceived is where so much of the pain lives. So how do I make peace with this tug of war between wanting connection and sometimes needing solitude? The truth is, some days I don't. Some days I still get caught in the loop of self-doubt and frustration. I feel like I'm letting people down by not being more social, and at the same time, letting myself down by not protecting my energy more fiercely. It's a tricky middle ground to hold, and I don't always get it right. But I've started to give myself more permission to name the contradiction rather than solve it. I can say to myself, yes, I feel left out, and yes, I also would not have enjoyed being there for 4 hours with fireworks and loud music. Both can be true. I can feel grief for the missed connection and relief that I preserved my well-being. I try to build in smaller bridges, things like low-stakes hangouts, shorter events, one-on-one time with people I trust, or virtual chats where I can control my environment. I've also had to let go of the idea that everyone has a tribe, that if I just tried harder, I'd magically find mine. Maybe my tribe is smaller, maybe it's more diffuse, maybe it includes a few people I only see now and then, but who really get me when we're together. That counts. That matters. And the more I've let go of chasing normal, the more I've been able to appreciate what actually works for me, even if it doesn't look like what others are doing. That doesn't mean I don't still feel lonely sometimes. I do, but I've stopped making that loneliness mean I'm broken. I still wish for more connection. I still want to be thought of, included, and chosen. But I also want to feel whole when I'm alone. And I think that's the work I'm always doing, learning how to hold space for both. If this contradiction resonates with you, if you felt that ache of wanting to be included and also dreading what inclusion might cost, I want you to know you're not alone. This is something many of us live with, not occasionally, but often. It doesn't mean we're defective or ungrateful or antisocial. It means we have limits, and honoring those limits is a form of self-respect. Sometimes I imagine what life would feel like if I didn't have to weigh every social decision against my bandwidth, or if I didn't fear the consequences of getting it wrong. I imagine a world where invitations come with nuance, where people understand when I say no and invite me anyway next time. Where showing up exactly as I am doesn't mean I have to sacrifice comfort, clarity, or identity. And even though we're not fully there yet, I do believe we can move closer by naming these patterns out loud, by unlearning shame, and by building relationships that can hold complexity. We deserve that. We deserve spaces where we don't have to trade authenticity for acceptance, where our rhythms and needs are respected, maybe even embraced. So if you're navigating this lonely path as well, I see you. And I want to say this clearly. Your struggle makes sense. Your longing makes sense. Your boundaries make sense. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If you found this video helpful, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and share it with anyone you think might benefit from my content. Keep on working to find that balance, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.